Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here. So, we are going to be continuing our letters here. The moral letters to Lucilius, part of this series. You can check out the whole playlist here. It'll be in the card and description below as well. And make sure you click subscribe if you want to get all of the videos in this series. I'm going to keep on producing them. There's like 100 letters here. We are on letter 10 today. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about letters to Lucilius. These are letters that are written by Seneca, a very famous Stoic, probably the father of the Stoic school of thought, something that that can be very, very beneficial in your life and dealing with life. It's a philosophy for life. So, on living to oneself, this is letter 10. 1. Yes, I do not change my opinion. Avoid the many, avoid the few, avoid even the individual. I know of no one with whom I should be willing to have you shared. Okay, and see what an opinion of you I have, for I dare to trust you with your own self. Crates, they say, or Crates, probably, the disciple of the very Stilbo, whom I mentioned in a former letter, noticed a young man walking by himself and asked him what he was doing all alone. I am communing with myself, replied the youth. Pray be careful then, said Crates, and take good heed, you're communing with a bad man. So he's kind of saying here, that basically, I do not change my opinion. Avoid the many, okay? Avoid the few. Avoid even the individual. I know no one whom I should be willing to have you shared. It's a very narrow path, right? This path, path of self-development, of introspection, and even talking to yourself, even communing with yourself. You can get into trouble, right? We talked about in some of the other letters about the crowds, avoiding the crowds and that group thing. And now he's talking about how it's even yourself. You can't even trust yourself with yourself, right? This is how dangerous that life is, right? How much poison your own thoughts can poison you, right? So, number 2, when persons are in mourning or fearful about something, we're accustomed to watch them, that we may prevent them from making a wrong use of their loneliness. No thoughtless person ought to be left alone. In such cases, he only plans folly and heaps up future dangers for himself and for others. He brings into play his base desires. The mind displays what fear or shame used to repress. It whets his boldness, stirs his passions, and goads his anger. And finally, the only benefit that solitude confers, the habit of trusting no man and of fearing no witness, is lost to the fool, for he betrays himself. When people are in mourning, we don't leave them alone, because they're going to do bad shit. They're going to have these bad ideas. They're going to be like, I'm going to burn down the building. I'm going to do whatever. They're going to get revenge. They're going to come up with all these bad things. But he's saying that really it's this fool, the fool in solitude, who's dangerous here. Mark therefore what my hopes are for you. Nay, rather what I am promising myself. Inasmuch as hope is merely the title of an uncertain blessing, I do not know any person with whom I should prefer you to associate rather than yourself. So he's kind of paying a compliment here. He's saying I don't know anyone better that you should be around than yourself. Like, you are in good company when you're in yourself. You're not a fool like some people. But even then, it's like there's still this danger. I remember in what a great-souled way you hurled forth certain phrases, and how full of strength they were. I immediately congratulated myself and said, these words did not come from the edge of the lips. These utterances have a solid foundation. This man is not one of the many. He has regard for his real welfare. So he's paying him a pretty big compliment here, saying that it's not just things that he said, that it's a really core belief system that these things are springing forward, and also that he can be trusted with himself, that he is of that character, which is a pretty high compliment here. So number 4, speak and live in this way. See to it that nothing keeps you down. As for your former prayers, you may dispense the gods from answering them. Offer new prayers. Pray for a sound mind and for good health, first of soul and then of body. And of course you should offer those prayers frequently. Call boldly upon God. You will not be asking him for that which belongs to another. 5. But I must say, as is my custom, send a little gift along with this letter. It is a true saying which I have found in Athenodorus, Know that thou art freed from all desires when thou hast reached such a point that thou prayest to God for nothing except what thou canst pray for openly. Think about this a little bit here. There's not as much meat in this letter as some of the other letters, but this is a pretty meaty statement that he's got here. He's basically saying that you're freed from desires when you can pray to God for nothing except that what you can pray openly for. So how many times do you and maybe you don't pray to God, or maybe you do, but how many times do you ask for things or want things or have things that you're asking for that you wouldn't want anyone to know? Right? That if it were publicly, if you were, if people could read your mind or they could hear your prayers, it would be embarrassing. And so he's saying that, like, when you get to that point where all the things that you desire are open, then you've actually released yourself from these desires. And it's kind of a good judgment point, right? Like, what are the things that you are afraid of, that you're afraid of other people knowing? It could be a problem, right? They can indicate that maybe you're not living your life in the way that you should be. That is congruent with your own principles. How foolish men are now. They whisper the basis of prayers to heaven, but if anyone listens, they are silent at once. Right? That which they are unwilling for men to know, they communicate to God. Do you not think then that some such wholesome advice as this could be given to you? Live among men as if God beheld you. Speak with God as if men were listening. Farewell. So I think that's kind of interesting. That idea, live among men as if God beheld you, as if God was there, right? And speak with God as if men were listening. I think that's just solid general advice, is to live your life in such a way, that if God were observing you, right, that you'd be fine with it, and also that when you're speaking to God, when you're in private, that you wouldn't care if other people heard you. And that's just, it's being congruent. It's being consistent with yourself. It doesn't mean that you live a perfectly pious life, right? I mean, there's two ways to think about this. From a moralistic perspective, you could say, well, if you did perfectly clean, never did anything wrong, then that would be true, right? You would be living in such a way that if God observed you living among men, he would be like, good job. The more powerful idea and concept behind this is to be comfortable with who you are and not non-judgmental, and to not give a fuck what other people think. I think that's a much more powerful idea, right? And I'm not sure exactly if that's what Seneca was hitting on, but I like to think that he was here, because that's a much more powerful idea in my mind, because that is more realistic, because that is acceptance. And acceptance is something that can totally transform you, right? Acceptance for yourself, that's where it starts, and then acceptance for others after that. And then you live with much less burden, right? Because you don't care who hears you or sees you, or what their perceptions of you are. You're living truly, and by that you become free, and by that freedom you also have the ability to love and to treat other people with true kindness or true charity, as opposed to doing things because they're, quote, right, or doing things because that's the honorable thing to do or the proper thing to do, which is empty. It's very empty, right? So, all right, that's all I have for my rant on this today. To summarize here, on this letter, I think some of you have been asking for that. He's really just paying a compliment in this letter. That's really the purpose of this, is to encourage his friend Lucilius, just to say that, look, you're doing a good job. Like, I can't really think of anyone else I'd rather you hang around with than yourself. A lot of people get into trouble hanging around themselves. But you know what? I think that maybe you're doing good, man. So keep it up, and keep asking for more, and keep on growing. And I think that sometimes you just need some encouragement. So, all right, that's all I have for you today. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you click the subscribe button. Click the bell, as we're going to keep on going through these letters. You got comments, you got ideas, let me know. You got questions, let me know. And make sure you check out the whole playlist. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.